Good afternoon. The first item of business this afternoon is a member's affirmation. I invite our new member, Christian Allard, to make the solemn affirmation.
Would you please repeat after me? I, Christian Allard,
I, Christian Allard,
do solemnly, sincerely and truly declare and affirm
do solemnly, sincerely and truly declare and affirm
that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance
that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance
to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth, her heirs and successors, according to law.
To Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth, her heirs and successors, according to law. Moi, Christian Allard, jure solennellement fidélité et fait allégeance pleine et entière à Sa Majesté la Reine Élisabeth, ses héritiers et successeurs, conformément à la loi.
The next item of business is consideration of Business Motion 6583 in the name of Joe FitzPatrick on behalf of the Parliamentary Bureau, setting out a timetable for the Stage 3 consideration of the Aquaculture and Fisheries Scotland Bill. Any member who wishes to speak against the motion should press the Request to Speak button now. And I call on Joe FitzPatrick to move motion number 6583.
Formally moved.
No member is asked to speak against the motion, therefore I now put the question to the Chamber. The question is that motion number 6583 in the name of Joe FitzPatrick be agreed to. Are we all agreed? The motion is therefore agreed to. We now move to portfolio questions on culture and external affairs. Question number 1, Kevin Stewart.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what recent discussions it has had with Aberdeen City Council about cultural issues.
Cabinet Secretary Fiona Hislop.
The Scottish Government regularly meets Creative Scotland, the Convention of Scottish Local Authorities and Vocal Scotland to discuss issues and share information in relation to culture and cultural services in a local authority context. The Scottish Government has not had recent discussions with Aberdeen City Council about cultural issues, although my officials met council officials in November where their UK City of Culture bid was raised.
Kevin Stewart.
Thank you. Our libraries are great cultural assets. Aberdeen faces the threat of library closures emanating from the Labour-led council, even though in the Press and Journal on the 8th of January 2010, the current Labour candidate for Aberdeen's Donside said, "We welcome the move not to close any libraries, as knowledge is key to any city's success." Does the Cabinet Secretary agree that libraries are a key to success, and will she join me in calling on Aberdeen City Council to lift the threat of closure as soon as possible?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, the threat of library closures in Aberdeen is deeply disappointing, as it may be in other areas, for example in Murray. I would remind the Chamber that the only statutory duty in culture that local councils have is in relation to libraries, where they have to make sure there is adequate provision for all. And in relation to the role of libraries, libraries are great success stories across Scotland. They're modernising, they're finding ways to get new readers, to engage with the local community. So I encourage Aberdeen, if there's an opportunity, to rethink their policy and to do what other local authorities are doing to embrace libraries as a great asset for our communities.
Lewis MacDonald.
I'm very pleased that the Cabinet Secretary supports Willie Young in his view of the importance of libraries in Aberdeen and elsewhere. And given that she does agree with Willie Young, will she agree also to work with Aberdeen City Council in order to take forward the modernisation and further improvement of a fantastic public library service in the city?
Cabinet Secretary.
I've never met Willie Young. In terms, therefore, of agreeing, I think it's very difficult to agree with somebody you've never met. In terms, however, of libraries, I think it really is important that, one, we respect local authorities' decision-making in terms of the local authority area, but it is quite clear that in terms of our statutory responsibilities, Libraries are the only statutory responsibility that local authorities have in this area. I take a keen interest in that. In terms of how we're developing Book Week Scotland, again, we just launched the second year of that just recently. It's really important that people stand by their libraries, whether it be in Aberdeen, whether it be in Murray, or whether it be anywhere else.
Alex Johnson.
The Cabinet Secretary mentioned that she discussed the City of Culture bid. Can she give an undertaking to me and to the people of Aberdeen that she will take no action prior to 2017 which will deny us the opportunity to have the United Kingdom City of Culture in the north east of Scotland?
Cabinet Secretary.
I'm delighted that the quality and range and enthusiasm and opportunities for culture, both in Aberdeen and Dundee, have been recognised by both cities in putting forward bids for the City of Culture. And I'm delighted that they will be able to progress that, and we look forward to seeing whether they meet the shortlist in June of this year, with the announcement made in November. And I am absolutely convinced that should either of them be nominated as a City of Culture, that we will all join in celebrations and build and make sure that we have a great year in 2017.
Question number 2, Anne McTaggart.
Thanks, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what projects it is funding to promote social, cultural and business links with Poland.
Cabinet Secretary.
The links between Scotland and Poland are varied and long-standing. The Scottish Government promotes social, cultural and business links with Poland in a number of ways. Last year I met the Polish Minister of Culture and Natural Heritage at the Edinburgh Culture Summit for discussions, and joined the Minister to attend a performance of Macbeth at the Edinburgh International Festival by a Polish theatre company supported by the Polish Cultural Institute. The Race, Religion and Refugee Integration Equality Fund provides funding to projects supporting Polish nationals who have come to work and live in Scotland, including Motherwell and Wishaw Citizens Advice Bureau, specifically for a Polish volunteer recruitment project. And SDI actively supports businesses to explore trade opportunities in the Polish market, including supporting a visit to Warsaw last year when the delegation met with industry representatives from the food and drink and ICT sectors.
Anne McTaggart.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that reply. Recent research by the University of West of Scotland illustrates that ethnic minority entrepreneurs often fail to seek support from readily available government sources, and that immigrants in Scotland are less likely to make use of the key public services. This analysis includes the estimated 800,000 Polish nationals resident in Scotland. Does the Minister agree that such research suggests that there is a huge amount more the Scottish Government could be doing to engage with those form of Eastern European background living in Scotland?
Cabinet Secretary.
I think that research is very interesting indeed, and I agree with her with the opportunities for entrepreneurs from different communities. And clearly, if there are opportunities that are not being taken up, and we have to provide or look at services for communities such as those from the Polish community setting up new businesses, then that's something that's well worth exploring. I think it's something that would be a useful area to explore with Business Gateway and local authorities, to see in terms of local communities how that can be best supported.
Question number 3 in the name of Drew Smith has been withdrawn. The member has provided an explanation. Question number 4, Jackie Bailey.
To ask the Scottish Government what its plans are to recognise and promote Scotland's cultural achievers locally.
Cabinet Secretary.
The Scottish Government supports work to recognise and promote achievements by individuals, projects and communities and places locally through grant funding to Creative Scotland, Scotland's National Agency for the Arts, Screen and Creative Industries. Creative Scotland recognises and promotes Scotland's cultural activity through its investment programme, which supports artists and organisations across Scotland. For example, in Dumbarton, Ross Birrell was awarded £10,000 through the Creative Scotland's Professional Development Programme for the development of a music and poetry-based films installation, and Scott McWatt was awarded £4,500 through Creative Scotland's Quality Production Programme to support his second indie folk album, both of course constituents in her area.
Jackie Bailey.
Can I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that response? And we are delighted to have that recognised locally. But the Cabinet Secretary has also in the past visited the Helensburgh Heroes project, and she knows at first hand of their impressive work to recognise the great Scots from my area, including people such as John Logie Baird. Does she believe that it might be useful to roll out a scheme to coincide with Glasgow's Commonwealth Games that would actually encourage tourists to visit surrounding areas such as Helensburgh and learn about our local heroes?
Cabinet Secretary.
Of course, it was July last year that I visited the area, the place, the building where the Heroes Centre, where I think the proposal was meant to be developed. I was very impressed with it. I think it showed a great deal of energy and also as a way of putting a spotlight on our local heroes. And I think at a time of the Commonwealth Games where we'll be supporting our sporting heroes, I think it's important that we also look at the cultural programme around that. My colleague Hamza Youssef will be taking forward the Commonwealth Games aspects of the cultural area, and part of that is to ensure that all of Scotland, including Helensburgh and other areas, can benefit. But I think that's a very good idea indeed.
Richard Lyle.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The Cabinet Secretary may be aware of celebrating Lanarkshire 2013, which recognises and celebrates the region's achievements over the last 20 years and coincides with the bicentenary of the birth of Dr David Livingstone. Will the Cabinet Secretary join me in commending this excellent initiative, which showcases the contribution that Lanarkshire has made not just to Scotland but the world over the past 2 centuries?
Cabinet Secretary. I was very pleased to support that passionate endorsement of Lanarkshire. Celebrating Lanarkshire 2013 sounds like a great initiative, allowing communities to celebrate past achievements and cultural endeavours. And in terms of celebrating and marking the bicentenary of Dr David Livingstone, I think the member is quite right to say the impact is not just locally or here in Scotland. And I would like to inform the Chamber that tomorrow evening I will be in Brussels, where I will be hosting an event which will include a lecture on Dr David Livingstone. And I think that's also an opportunity to spread the word about achievements, not just here, but in Europe and abroad.
Question number 5, Stewart Maxwell.
To ask the Scottish Government what the results were of the recent ministerial visits to North America.
Cabinet Secretary.
The First Minister carried out an extensive programme of targeted business engagements with top US companies, developing both new and existing relationships. These meetings featured 220 new jobs, 34 jobs safeguarded and more than £12 million of new investment. He also addressed an audience of over 300 top US-based business leaders at the New York St Andrews Society's Business Networking Dinner, delivering a speech at Carnegie Council for Ethics, a public lecture at Princeton University. In Washington, D.C., he also delivered an address at the Brookings Institute. Keith Brown's programme in Canada provided for significant engagement with business in both Halifax and Toronto, as well as speaking at a number of networking events, including the SDI-led Trade Mission event in Toronto, supporting Scottish companies seeking to expand their activities in Canada. Mr Brown's programme also focused on air route development, including a meeting with Air Canada to recognise the forthcoming direct flight from Toronto to Edinburgh, which will commence a 3-weekly service on Canada Day this July. A full report on Scotland Week 2013 will be available shortly.
Stewart Maxwell.
Can I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that very detailed answer? During Scotland Week, it was announced that the National Conference of State Legislatures will meet for their conference here in the Parliament in this coming July. This will be the first time that NCSL has met outside the USA and will bring together House Speakers, Senate Presidents and leaders from legislatures across the 50 states. Does the Cabinet Secretary agree that this represents a unique opportunity to showcase Scotland to an international audience and indeed strengthen the ties between the US and Scotland? It also might give us the opportunity to celebrate with them their Independence Day and hopefully invite them back so that they can celebrate ours.
Cabinet Secretary.
Of course, Scotland Week 2013 was not only supported by ministers, it was well supported by the Scottish Parliament, and I'd like to congratulate you, Presiding Officer, on announcing the National Conference of State Legislatures from the US will take place here between the 10th and 12th of July, and I think it's quite correct to identify the opportunity, the huge opportunity that the Scottish Parliament has afforded to make sure that we can connect as a country with legislators across the world, and I look forward to the programme, a very interesting programme that I know the Parliament is putting forward, but I'm sure the Presiding Officer can speak for herself in promoting this great opportunity. But the member is right to draw attention of the Chamber to this very important announcement that was made by the Presiding Officer during Scotland 2013.
Question number 6, Dennis Robertson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government, what benefits are there in celebrating creative places in Scotland?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well as attracting visitors and inward investment, creative and cultural activity helps to support shape our communities and places, fostering and reinforcing people's sense of identity and community cohesion. The Creative Scotland's Creative Place Awards, now in their second year, provide inspiration for people across Scotland as well as our visitors by encouraging and celebrating the exceptional creative programmes that are taking place in towns, villages and communities across the country, and supporting the development of projects that might not otherwise get recognition.
Dennis Robertson.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for her answer. Cabinet Secretary is probably very much aware that Huntly, in my own constituency of Aberdeenshire West, was one of the award-winning small towns for creative places. Would the Cabinet Secretary, with me, congratulate Huntly and its community for the hard work that they do with regard to bringing forward creative arts within that community, and especially Devon Arts? And would the Cabinet Secretary agree, perhaps, to visit Huntly in the summer recess?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, I'm delighted to congratulate Huntly on their award. They were successful in winning that award in January this year. The member may not be aware, but I'm already accepted an invitation from Devon Arts to visit during the summer recess to see their work firsthand, and I would very much look forward to the member joining me so that we can find out more about the exciting work that they're doing in promoting Huntly within his constituency.
Annabel Goldie.
Would the Minister agree that a marvellous creative place to celebrate in Scotland would be a dedicated film studio with related facilities? And when does she expect Scotland to get its own Hollywood or Pinewood?
Cabinet Secretary.
The member will know that I have repeatedly called for an effective business plan to be presented that would allow Scotland to take the opportunities that are available. I'm very enthusiastic about the film industry in Scotland and the opportunities that a film studio would provide. I understand and share some frustrations at the lack of movement. That will require some firm proposals coming forward from the industry, but I stand ready and the government agencies stand ready to help support a film studio should it come forward in terms that can be supported in terms of public money and an effective business plan.
Question number 7, Jean Urquhart.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what regular contact it has with Member States of the Commonwealth of Nations.
Minister Humza Yousaf.
The Scottish Government has had contact with a range of Member States of the Commonwealth of Nations, including recent ministerial visits to India, Malawi and Canada, 3 of our priority countries. We look forward to welcoming the nations of the Commonwealth to Scotland, of course, for the 2014 Commonwealth Games.
Ms Urquhart.
I thank the Minister for his reply. The Minister may have seen the Guardian's report of May the 5th that detailed the brutal treatment of Kenyans involved in the Mau Mau rebellion by British forces. Does the Minister agree with me that it's important for historical wrongs, either at home or abroad, to be addressed in a manner that will build mutual respect?
Minister.
I thank the member for the question. I did see the report in The Guardian. My family and my mother had to leave Kenya shortly after the emergency period because of the hostilities that were created due to the suppression of the Mau Mau people. It would be inappropriate of me to comment directly on the particular case that is presently in process. As a general principle, it's vital that we do learn lessons of the past, and that in the present we're guided by international human rights standards. This is an approach that the Scottish Government is committed to. I say it's important that we learn lessons from the past because the brutal conditions of detention of the Mau Mau were a key part, are a key part of the claims that are being sought after by Kenyan clients. And we have to wonder truly if the UK Government has learnt those lessons. Just think of British resident Shakarama, who's been detained in Guantanamo Bay for 11 years. 6 of those years he's been cleared, and barely a peep from successive UK governments, which is, frankly, a national disgrace. So I agree that absolutely we must abide by international law, learn our lessons from the past, of which Scotland, of course, must do as well, and be guided by international human rights standards.
Question 8, Bob Doris.
To ask the Scottish Government how it is working with Kurdistan Regional Government to strengthen links between Scotland and Kurdistan.
Minister.
First of all, let me put on record the member's dedication and hard work in terms of with the community of Kurdistan here in Scotland. The Scottish Government and the Scottish Development International are working with the Kurdistan Regional Government to explore possible business, cultural and educational links. Scotland has a range of existing links with Kurdistan and a wealth of expertise in oil and gas, banking and finance, education and trade, all of which are of interest to Kurdistan. For example, Scottish ministers have met with representatives of the Kurdistan Regional Government, and the Scottish Government has hosted members of staff from the KRG on an internship programme. The SDI is currently working with the Kurdistan Regional Government to explore the potential for trade and investment between our two nations, and the National Youth Orchestra of Iraq, which included many Kurdish performers, participated in last year's Edinburgh Fringe. Finally, I'd like to add that the Scottish Government welcomes the contribution of the Kurdish community and that contribution that they make to Scottish society, socially culturally and economically.
Bob Doris.
Can I thank the Minister for that detailed answer? As the Minister will know, I've got a large Kurdish community in Glasgow, many of whom were present in this chamber during my members' debate to pay tribute to Scotland's Kurdish diaspora and recognising the horrific genocide of Halabja and Saddam Hussein's horrific Al-Anfal campaign. Can I ask if the Scottish Government will work with the Kurdish regional government to ensure that Halabja and Al-Anfal genocides is recognised by the international community, something that I know my constituents in Glasgow and Kurds across the world feel is a vital step for recognition for the horrors that befell them during a dreadful period in their history?
Minister.
The Scottish Government will. When Bob Doris when the member brought this debate to the Scottish Parliament, I congratulated him at the time for something that's so internationally significant. It's the correct thing that this Parliament and this Government has a response as well. And Scotland values its relationship with governments across the world and is a good global citizen, very happy to discuss issues of fundamental human rights. In terms of the recognition of genocide, as was explained in that previous debate, there is a complex legal issue, which means the issue of definition is far from straightforward. However, I am absolutely committed to work with representatives of the Kurdistan Regional Government, members of the Kurdish community here in Scotland, elected members, to see how we can work alongside the UK Government, the FCO, in particular to see how we can push for that definition if it is appropriate.
Thank you. We now move to portfolio questions on infrastructure, investments and cities. Question number 1, John Scott.
Thank you very much. To ask the Scottish Government what recent discussions ministers have had with local authorities regarding the condition of the road network.
Minister Keith Brown.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The condition of Scotland's roads has been raised in general discussions between ministers and local authorities, and in addition, a strategic action group has been set up to oversee the implementation of 30 initiatives flowing from the National Road Maintenance Review. These initiatives are aimed at ensuring all road authorities in Scotland efficiently manage and maintain our roads. I jointly chair this group with Councillor Stephen Hagan, COSLA spokesperson for Regeneration and Sustainable Development. The next meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, the 26th of June 2013.
John Scott.
Thank the Minister for his answer. And he will be aware that a survey published by the AA earlier this year found that Scotland's roads are in the worst condition of any in the UK, and more than half of Scottish drivers believe that the condition of council-maintained roads has deteriorated since last year. And in view of these concerns, the huge backlog of road maintenance work being faced and the funding constraints on Scottish councils, what further practical steps will the Scottish Government take to help deal with the poor state of our non-trunk roads?
Minister.
I take John Scott's point about the financial constraints on our councils, but he really must ponder the fact of why do they have those financial constraints. We have had 1 quarter, about 26% of our capital budget constrained. We have to pass on what we have to local authorities. It's the case just now that our revenue budget is also being constrained. We're giving a larger proportion of our budget to local authorities than previous administrations have done. So he really has to accept some responsibility for the fact that we are living in these constrained times because of the money we have to rely upon from the UK Government. Despite that, I believe that the National Roads Maintenance Review produced a number of very positive actions which allow us to work jointly much more effectively between local authorities, one to another, and also between local authorities and the Scottish Government. It's a huge job. There's been a backlog for a number of years. But a great deal of work is going into making sure that the money that we spend on roads goes even further. Perhaps he can do something to talk to his colleagues down south to try and help the budget situation that he says councils are in.
Question number 2, in the name of Patricia Ferguson, has been withdrawn. The member has provided an explanation. Question number 3, Sandra White.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what help is available for local traders to ensure that local communities thrive.
Cabinet Secretary.
We're working hard to maintain Scotland's position as the best place to do business. Despite UK Government funding cuts, our business rates relief package will reduce business rates taxation by £560 million this year. As part of this, 2 in every 5 business properties across Scotland benefit from 0 or reduced rates through the Small Business Bonus Scheme.
Sandra White.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that reply. And indeed, what the Scottish Government do is most welcome. In fact, the traders in these areas tell me so. But the Cabinet Secretary will be aware of the situation in Byres Road and High Street in my constituency, which has seen many small businesses closed, leading to concerns amongst traders and obviously communities also. Can I ask the Cabinet Secretary if she agrees with me that if these areas are to survive and flourish, urgent action is needed, in particular by Glasgow City Council and their Alio City property, which we know is already under investigation? And can I ask the Cabinet Secretary if she will agree to meet with me and interested parties to discuss this situation and perhaps address the issue also?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, I very much recognise that town centres or high streets can be and are a central component of successful local economies. They offer a base for small businesses and jobs. That's why we've got the town centre review underway just now and under the leadership of Malcolm Fraser. I know from my own constituency experience, as well as the areas that Sandra White has identified, also how many challenges town centres and high streets face just now. That's why just last month the Government introduced a new business rates relief, Fresh Start, from the 1st of April this year, which built on a suggestion made by Mark MacDonald, whose successor has just been sworn into Parliament. And one of the things this relief, which is unique to Scotland, does is to allow businesses looking to expand some vital breathing space if they locate in previously empty properties, and at the same time that gives a boost to our high streets. So I'd be very happy to meet with Sandra White. I and my officials would be happy to discuss the Fresh Start scheme further, and also to have a discussion about what further action can be taken to further boost our town centres.
Question number 4, Joe McAlpine.
Thank you. To ask the Scottish Government what progress it has made on implementing Scotland's Digital Future Infrastructure Action Plan.
Cabinet Secretary.
The Government has made significant progress towards our aim of having world-class digital infrastructure across Scotland by 2020. We have committed over £240 million to the Step Change programme, which will deliver access to next-generation broadband for 85 to 90% of premises in Scotland. The contract for the Highlands and Islands project was awarded to BT in March, and we remain on schedule to award the Rest of Scotland contract by the end of June. We've also successfully launched Community Broadband Scotland, which is a £5 million initiative that's delivering targeted support to rural and remote communities to help them deliver their own broadband solutions. And we're continuing to build consensus and support from industry and the public sector around our vision and our more detailed plans for 2020.
Joe McAlpine.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for her answer. Is she aware of recent reports on some difficulties facing the broadband pilots project in Annan in the south of Scotland region, and can she give us any kind of update on discussions she may have had on this matter?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, I am aware of the Annan pilot and confirm that it is going ahead. It's a cutting-edge project which is led by Dumfries and Galloway Council that is aiming to open up the existing public sector Pathfinder network to deliver broadband services to the community while trialling white space technology. I know there have been some teething issues that have emerged around the technology, and Dumfries and Galloway Council have taken the decision to limit the trial, but the pilot will still bring an enhanced next-generation broadband service to 25 SMEs, community facilities and residents in the town. It's already also confirmed that the existing public sector Pathfinder network can be used to deliver broadband services to the wider community, and that was the key objective of the trial. So with 25 participants, the Annan pilot is still one of the largest trials of white space broadband in the world, something I think the town can be justifiably proud of. But of course I would be more than happy to meet with the member if she wants to discuss the issue in more detail.
Richard Baker.
When will there be further details of the individual local schemes across Scotland, including in the North East, where there have been schemes put forward by the local councils? And is the Scottish Government on target with its aim to have above-average uptake of broadband in Scotland by this year?
Cabinet Secretary.
In relation to Richard Baker's first question, as I said in my original answer, the Highlands and Islands contract has now been signed, and very soon the details of the rollout will be announced. Obviously, we can't get to that stage with the Rest of Scotland until the contract has been signed, but as I said in my initial answer, we're on track for that by June this year. In terms of the second part of Richard Baker's question, I think that is as important as the infrastructure. The infrastructure is very important, and the Step Change programme is designed to address that. But equally important is making sure we encourage people to take up the opportunities of the infrastructure, and that's why we are consulting at the moment around our digital dialogue about how we encourage businesses, individuals, the public sector to make use of that infrastructure, because we do want Scotland to be world leading, and I'd be very happy to meet with any members to discuss that in more detail, because I think individual members have got a role to play in their own communities in taking forward that work.
Question number 5, Mark Griffin.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government how the works associated with the Edinburgh-Glasgow Improvement Programme will impact on services from Croy Railway Station.
Minister Keith Brown.
A number of station platforms along the Edinburgh-Glasgow routes, including Croy, will be extended to accommodate longer trains, delivering significant improvements in capacity and journey times to Croy passengers. There will be no diminution in the frequency of services to Croy Station.
Mark Griffin.
I thank the Minister for that answer. I have been advised that during the engineering works, Edinburgh to Glasgow trains will be diverted via Cumbernauld. When it was opened by the Minister, Croy Station was Scotland's largest park and ride car park with 915 car park spaces. What arrangements will be put in place to accommodate the high volume of commuters who use Croy Station car park and to mitigate the potential impact on communities around the alternative Cumbernauld stations?
Minister.
I think it's probably best to deal with that with the member. I can go through the exact programme which has been agreed as part of the project. The project does involve, there's no question, some elements of disruption. That's inevitable in a project of this scale. So I'm happy to meet with the member to go through exactly how that's to be dealt with. But it's probably worth just saying to the member just now that the various elements of the programme are on schedule or ahead of schedule. They mentioned Cumbernauld. The Cumbernauld commitment, of course, that we've given is that we must have the Cumbernauld side of things electrified in time for the Commonwealth Games, and that remains the intention. That remains on track. We've already seen a number of other improvements that have been made already in terms of the Edinburgh-Glasgow Improvement Project. So things are moving along. There will be some disruption. We've always acknowledged that point, and provisions have been put in place to deal with Croy, and I'm happy to go through that with the member if you'd like to meet with you to discuss it.
Question number 6 in the name of David Stewart hasn't been lodged. The member has provided an explanation. Question number 7, Ian Gray.
To ask the Scottish Government what its position is on the measures outlined in the proposed Bus Regulation Scotland Bill.
Minister Keith Brown.
The Scottish Government is committed to improving bus services and the workings of the current regulatory framework. We will study the detail of the proposed bill from that perspective.
Ian Gray.
I am very pleased that the Minister is prepared to study suggestions which are indeed designed to try and provide a framework for better bus services. I wonder if the Minister would be willing to meet with me and discuss the proposal for the bill and how we can work together to improve the framework for bus services.
Minister.
Of course, I'm happy to meet with the member. I should say that there are a number of different views about what the regulatory framework for bus services should be, and we're currently involved in a discussion with a number of bus stakeholders through the bus stakeholder group, the basis for which is the series of proposals which have been put forward by SPT around some elements of regulation and other improvements. And I am willing to meet with the member, but I should say I would want to treat seriously any proposal that came forward, but that proposal should be a serious proposal. So if it's to involve substantial extra costs, I think those should be identified as far as it's possible to do that through the process, and also if it's possible to identify where those resources come from, that would also make it a more serious proposal. But I have no problem at all with meeting with the member to discuss his proposed bill.
Question number 8, Chick Brodie.
Officer, to ask the Scottish Government what approach it anticipates taking to the Davis Airport Commission's inquiry into airport capacity in the UK.
Minister Keith Brown.
When the First Minister met Sir Howard Davis, the Chair of the Airports Commission, in October 2012, he noted the reduction in Scotland's access to London airports, in particular Heathrow, in recent years, and the constraints that places on the Scottish economy. The Scottish Government will continue to make this point as the work of the Commission progresses, including at the Scottish Stakeholder event that we are facilitating for the Commission on the 5th of June.
Chick Brodie.
I thank the Minister for his answer. Because of the dilatory and insular approach of successive Westminster governments, the UK airport strategy is in tatters. Will the Scottish Government produce a Scottish air transport strategy which looks beyond the narrow focus of Westminster on South East England airports, and one which will recognise the significant positive impact that the removal of air passenger duty and more direct flights would have for the Scottish economy?
Minister.
Could I first of all acknowledge the work that both Chick Brodie and Colin Keir have done in this area, in particular in relation to aviation. For our part, the strategy that we have on air passenger duty and the improvement of Scotland's international air connectivity is well documented, as is our advocacy of the need to secure Scotland's access to the airports in the south east of England. We want to have policies which are geared for the reality of the needs of aviation in Scotland, not the congested south east of England. And until we have control of all the policy and regulatory levers relating to aviation, we will have to continue to advocate changes to the UK Government strategy which reflect our ambitions.
John Scott.
Presiding Officer, the Minister will be aware that the cross-party group on aviation met last night, and he would want to know that concerns were expressed that as yet there is no successor programme to route development funding. While the industry and MSPs have been told since January that an announcement is expected soon, can you tell us when the industry will be consulted, when this piece of work will be completed and the new programme put in place?
Minister.
I can confirm to John Scott that substantial work has been done on this area and continues to be done. It's not straightforward, and of course some of the fundamentals on which this strategy will have to rely, air passenger duty, some of the European regulations, does change over time, so those have to be taken into account. But I can give the undertaking to the member that as this work progresses, and there's substantial progress made already, we'll certainly keep the member and the chamber informed.
Question number 9, Graham Day.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what assistance it is giving local authorities to improve access to affordable housing.
Minister Margaret Burgess.
We are investing £860 million in housing supply in the current 3-year period. Last year, we introduced a 3-year resource planning approach to March 2015, bringing together for the first time the Council and registered social landlord funding streams into one budget. Our approach will enable each council to exercise its strategic role more flexibly and to put forward to Government a programme of social and affordable housing developments based on their local housing strategy.
Graham Day.
I thank the Minister for that answer. Angus Council, working in partnership with the Scottish Government, is in the midst of delivering a programme of additional affordable housing across the county, which, once completed in 2015, will result in the provision of around 200 properties, with the Council providing just over £18 million towards the cost, and the Government approaching £5.5 million. Can the Minister confirm that the Government will continue to engage with Angus Council and the RSLs to help enhance affordable housing in Angus?
Minister.
We will, of course, engage with Angus and all other local authorities across Scotland to improve access to affordable housing. Angus Council has been allocated resource planning assumptions of just under £9 million for the 3 years to March 2015. For the longer term, all councils have been asked to draw up strategic housing investment plans for affordable housing completions over the next 5 years. We have also been able to provide minimum planning assumptions for the 3 years to March 2018 to permit the necessary advanced planning. And I provided this assurance to Angus Council recently at the opening of a new Angus development at Inveraldy this month, of which the member was present. The first new council house is in rural Angus for over 30 years. The message is clear. The Scottish Government is committed to working in partnership with local authorities to continue developing the same kind of much-needed, high-quality, affordable housing that has been delivered at Inveraldy.
Lee Murray.
The Finance Secretary recently made an announcement in the form of an answer to a written question on the Barnett consequentials arising from the UK budget. Does the Minister anticipate that local authorities and housing associations will benefit from these funds?
The announcement recently made is correct, and that is still under discussion. But yes, there will be some consequentials, we would hope, to housing associations.
Question number 10, Paul Martin.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what assistance it is giving to local authorities to improve access to... to ask the Scottish Government what steps it is taking to prevent tenants and landlords from being exploited by unregulated letting agents.
Minister Margaret Burke.
Recent action by the Scottish Government has improved protection for tenants and landlords. In 2012, we clarified the law on premium payments, making it clear that tenants should only be charged rent and a refundable deposit when a tenancy is granted, renewed or continued. Last year also saw introduction of 3 national tenancy deposit schemes to safeguard tenants' money and provide a free dispute resolution service. At the end of this month, the Scottish Government will launch a new strategy for the private rented sector. The strategy has been influenced by dialogue with landlord and tenant interests and will outline action the Scottish Government plans to take to improve standards in the letting agent industry.
Paul Martin.
Presiding Officer, I am sure the Minister will be aware of the increase in the number of my constituents, and I am sure our constituents throughout Scotland, who have experienced some significant difficulties with being exploited by unregulated let agents. I wonder if the Government have considered the possibility of a more effective regime being put in place to ensure that we can regulate this industry to ensure the exploitation of tenants and landlords.
Minister.
I share the member's concern, and it certainly has been brought to our attention that some letting agents are flouting the law, and we have recently consulted on our strategy for the private rented sector, and this included options for further regulation of the letting agent industry in order to help raise standards of practice, and this is a matter we are now actively considering.
Thank you. That ends portfolio questions. We now move to the next item, which is a stage